So you can see the topic is supply chain, and supply chain is a very, very important topic because it is related to one of the P's of marketing, and that P is called distribution. And distribution P of marketing is an important P because scholar says that it is that P of marketing without which the company would not be able to move forward, which means that if you're a company selling goods or services or generally products, and you do not have an effective distribution or you do not have any distribution, you will come to a standstill. And that is evident from the pandemic that we are in. Take an example of the airline industry, which is the best example currently. Now, the airline industry is already an established industry, but because of the pandemic, their distribution or supply disrupted. What happened to them? How many of you know what happened to the airline industry around the world? They had to stop everything, right? So no delivery. No delivery means that even they had a good product. Take an example of the world famous airlines like Emirates Airline, Qatar Airlines, Singapore Airline. These are the world top rank airlines. They have the best product, the best service, everything the best. But since there was no delivery, so even these top ranked companies came to a stage where they are already in the stage where they are incurring a lot of losses rather than profit. Emirates Airline was expected to buy around 100 fleets, if I'm not wrong, before the pandemic, and they canceled that plane for around 10 years now. Why? Because there was no delivery, there is no supply. So when there is no supply and no delivery, what happens? Everything comes back to zero. So you can see the importance of this P of marketing. I'm not saying that we should deny the importance of other P's, the product, the price, and promotion. Each one of them have its own importance, but this one is of extreme importance because of its direct connection with the customers. So you have a very good product, but you are not able to deliver it. You have that chain, we call it a chain, that's why the term chain is there. That connection or that chain is broken, and when that chain is broken, you are not able to move forward. And that is the reason that this chapter is important. We call it the supply chain. And now, because of the internet and the growth in the information technology, the information and communication technology, they call it now. So we normally don't call it IT now, we call it ICT, which is information communication technology. Because of the information communication technology, the supply chain has become a value ecosystem. We'll talk about it in a while. Let's discuss what is a supply chain. The supply chain definition that I personally would like to give you is the easiest definition that I can think of are the steps involved, many steps involved in getting the product to the customer. That's the easiest definition I can give you. Steps involved in getting the product to the customer. I think this is one of the easiest definition that I can think of. We're talking about supply chain. Steps involved in getting the product to the customers. Now, the common channel of distribution, if you remember, would include, look, I'm sure that you can see the screen. The producer will move the product to the consumer, to the wholesaler. The wholesaler will move the product to the retailer, and the retailer will move the product to the consumer. But the supply chain is more or less the same. It only includes people before the producer as well. So the producer, the supplier, we call it, the supplier gives the product to the producer, and then the process is the same. I'll just directly write consumer. So there is a complete chain of activities involved in getting the product done, producing the product, and then distributing the product, and then providing that product to the consumer. So supply chain is a complete chain of activities. That's why the word chain is there. The chain term itself also is a metaphor used as connected activity. So please note it down with you that when we say chain, we are referring to connected activities. So there are so many connected activities that are related in the supply chain. We'll discuss that, inshallah, in this chapter. What is a value ecosystem? A value ecosystem means that previously supply chain, as I drew there on the right side of the slide, as you can see, previously the supply chain activities was independent, autonomous, individual activities, where the supplier had the raw material, the supplier give the raw material to the producer or the manufacturer, we call manufacture or produce the product, and then flow it forward to the consumers. These were the activities which were independent, autonomous activities in the supply chain. But now the supply chain has become a value ecosystem. A value ecosystem is a system where each and every entity in the supply chain complement one another. So it's a complementing process. It's a complementary process, complement one another in the supply chain. And that's what we call a value ecosystem, where the producer, the supplier, the wholesaler, the retailer, the agents, the brokers, the consumers, even in some books they include the consumers as well, all of them try their best to contribute their part in the whole process. Contribute their now the contribution of their part also has a different explanation. Some people say that each one of them are already contributing, which means that if the producer produced the product, he have already contributed in the production, then the final product is moved to the wholesaler. The wholesaler is also contributing. How is the wholesaler contributing? Wholesaler is trying to reach a bigger market which the producer alone cannot reach. Then retailers, how are the retailers contributing or adding value? The retailers are dividing the bulk of products into small acceptable quantities for the consumer, so they are also adding value, and the consumers eventually utilizing the product. But when we look at the more contemporary definition of value ecosystem, they say that in the manufacturing itself, in the process of production itself, all these members contribute. Please note it down with you. The contemporary definition of value ecosystem says that all the parties involved, look at the parties here, we can see that all the parties involved here, all of them are contributing in the manufacturing process as well, to make a product which is itself a valuable product for the customer. So each one of them are putting efforts, and most of them are putting efforts in the form of information flow, which we'll discuss. One of the functions of channel of distribution and supply chain is information flow. So they're providing information in order to produce that product which is ultimately a value product for the customers. Enough said, let's move forward, and you will see this is the chapter, the supply chain. Now, because of the advancement in technologies, is a value ecosystem. That is just a pictorial representation of how the traditional or old supply chain was, which is on the left side of the slide, and then on the right side you have a contemporary supply chain, and they also call it the value ecosystem. Now, if you look at this side, on the left side, you will see that on the top we have suppliers, then you have producers or manufacturers, then distributors, and then consumers. And the process was pretty straightforward, where the suppliers push the products or the material to the producers or manufacturers. The manufacturers produce the products, give it to the distributors, which I already told you are wholesaler, retailers, and agents, for example, and then the consumers. But on the right side, you see that they are pretty much interconnected. We see that these on the top, we have a lot of suppliers, not as a block, which you can see on the left side. Rather, they are independently working, and you see these lines that they are interconnected. Even a supplier here is connected with the consumer here, and even a manufacturer is connected with the distributor and the supplier, and all of them are connected. So if I name it, I would name this one as a traditional channel. It should be a traditional channel. And if I name this one, the other one, I would name it as a contemporary channel. Now contemporary channel. Now contemporary channel is also called it VMS, which is a vertical marketing system. That is not in your book, okay? So you people may have studied that in the basic marketing. I don't know whether it is in the basic, I think it's in advanced marketing, but still, VMS is vertical marketing system, where the traditional system, in the traditional system, the products are simply pushed towards the consumers. But in the vertical marketing system, all the entities, as you can see here on the right side of the slide, all the entities try to work together in order to produce a product that eventually becomes a valuable product for the customer. So even customer is a part of it. And how is the customer a part of it in the vertical marketing system? The customer normally provides valuable feedback to the channel members, say in the form of their needs and wants, in the form of their likes and dislikes, in the form of their satisfaction and dissatisfaction. So the producers really need to know the feedback of the customers. It's extremely important for all types of businesses, that if you find out what your customers think about you or what your customer want you to become, that will give you rich information to improve yourself. The problem with some of the companies are that they don't listen to the customers. And the problem with some of the companies are that they listen to the customers, but they don't understand the customers. So if you understand the customers, what they are telling you, and you follow that, if that makes sense, then you become a successful company. Then customers prefer you, then customers buy your product. And how it is possible to listen to the customers? If you follow the VMS or vertical marketing system, where customers become an integral part of the supply chain or an integral part of the whole system. Not only customers, the producers, the retailers, and the other members of the channel of distribution or the supply chain complement one another in order to give value. If you look at the slide, it says value creation here as well. And let me zoom it. The old system was value is based on the production of goods or services, but in the contemporary system, value is based on the knowledge exchange. Remember, I told you the information flow. So the knowledge exchange is very, very important for you to produce a product which eventually is a valuable product for the customers. So this is how the supply chain evolved over time, and this is how the supply chain looks like. Evolved over time. Well, the word evolve here, that the writers or the person who have prepared the slide, the publisher, have mentioned here, I somehow do not like it that much, because when we say evolved, it means that the old method is already obsolete. But that is not correct. There are still a lot of companies using the traditional channel of distribution of the traditional supply chain. That's why I somehow have my own reservations when I say evolved. Yeah, if you look at the other meaning of evolved, which means that it has changed over time, but both the methods are in place, then yes, it is okay with me. Let's move on further. What is the difference between a supply chain and a value chain? What is the difference between a supply chain and a value chain? Now, the answer to this question is in the previous slide, or that is what we have been discussing. A supply chain is a simple chain where the suppliers give the raw material or the required supplies to the manufacturer give it to the distributor, and the distributor to the customers. But when you say a value chain, each one of them contribute to add value to the product itself, not the process. And even in the traditional method, each one of them would add value actually. And as I mentioned to you earlier as well, that when a producer produce a product and the producer give the product to the distributor actually add value. And how do they add value? Those of you are my students from the retail management, they may have studied retailer is a supply chain entity or a channel of distribution member or a channel member. And we have already studied, I think it was in the first chapter, that retailers add value in the form of assorting, in the form of sorting, in the form of providing the product in a form that the customers accept it. So they are adding value. But here when we say a value chain, they are adding value to the product itself. So they are doing something in the product, and that I already mentioned specifically would be in the form of information provision to improve the product, to give that product to the customers with the customers want. Why this difference is important? This difference is important to distinguish between the traditional channel and the vertical marketing system. This difference is important to understand, to find out who are the co-creators. Now, I'll write down this word with you. You will see that in the coming slides as well. We call it value co-creators. Value co-creators. So they're the creators of the value for your product or services. Now, the emergence of value chain and the value ecosystem. That is now what we are going to discuss, the emergence, the introduction of the value chain and the value ecosystem. The first important thing is the digitization of businesses. Now, I'm not talking about business process, I'm generally talking about businesses, or just digitization. So like if I have to choose a good topic related to a value ecosystem, or if I have to answer this, that in how did the value chain or the value ecosystem emerged? What made the ecosystem what is responsible for the introduction of the ecosystem? So the easy answer, or a one-word answer, which I will ask you inshallah. So the one-word answer of the emergence of value chain or ecosystem is because of digitization, because of the growth in the information technology, because things are comparatively different if you compare it with the older times or the old times. Now, here they have mentioned specifically in the business processes that the business process is now becoming digital. What is digital, by the way? In order to understand digital, there is another term that you need to understand. And that word is called analog. Analog. So analog or digital. Analog is more mechanical, or it does not include technology a lot. But when we say digital, we are referring to the inclusion of technology or excessive use of technology. That may not be virtual, that may be physical, but the use of technology is there. For example, making your checkout process automatic. So the word automatic is also a very good term to understand here. So it is more automatic in process. It is more computerized in process. It is more technological oriented in process. So we call it digital. Analog is more mechanical, more human interference is there. So the two terms you should understand, the digital and the analog. Now, how the business processes become digital, we see that now we can come up with the precise outcomes. We know exactly how many items are required, how many items should be produced, and how many items the market would accept. So we actually can now, because of the growth of technology or digitization, we can actually get the exact precise outcome. you put a certain amount of raw material, and because of the digitization, you exactly know how many items would be produced, and that's an amazing business process revolution. And it is also related to something. If you remember, in the old times, there used to be, those of you who are aware of it, or those of you who have even factories, they may know that there used to be a lot of waste in the process of production. And I normally give an example of some of the soft drink companies, or some of the companies that produce skincare products, or you will see that they use natural resources. Most of them use natural resources, and they refined it so much that from one resource, like for example an orange juice, they use oranges. From an orange, they produce not only orange juice but so many other products. Previously, they used to waste a lot in the process of production. Now even the waste is used to produce more products, and the waste of waste is produced to more products. We produce more products. I would recommend you to go and read the cases, or just a story related to the production of orange juice. Read the story of, for example, Twister juice, or what is that other juice with a pulp? What is the name? One is Twister with a pulp, right? Then we have another one which is called Tropicana or Minute Maid. Go read about these companies. I'm talking about the companies like Pepsi and Coke, right? These are big companies. You see how they have digitized the business process, which has eventually reduced their waste, and they exactly know how many items will be produced. And by the end of the day, if you read some of the, I'll try to find out if I have that case available. I normally give it to my MBA students. If I have that case available in soft copy, I'll share with you, or I'll try to find out online and give it to you. You will be astonished to see how this Tropicana or Minute Maid or Twister company comes up with orange juice. What do they do with one orange? They come up with so many products and byproducts. So that is only possible because of the digitization of business processes. We exactly know how things will be produced. Things are also becoming more seamless. Seamless means that it is very much integrated. Please note it down with you. When we say seamless, it is so much integrated, it is so much coordinated that we don't know that there are two different platforms working together. I'll give an example. Take an example of Google Suite, right? Or the Google Suite, for example. What do they do is that Google have so many sub products that they're integrated so nicely that we actually don't feel that we are working on different platforms. An example of Google Classroom and Google Meet. Now you can see that these are two very different platforms, but I don't feel any difference. I go to Google Classroom, click on a link there, and directly my Google Meet starts. I go to, for example, Google Classroom and click on Create Sheet, Google Sheet, automatically a sheet. These are two different platforms or three different platforms, but they work so seamless. They're integrated so nicely that we don't see the clear distinction between them. And that is only possible because of the growth of information technology. And that's why the customer get an end-to-end experience. From one end to another end, the customer experience is positive. Build an in-house team for long term. Now, try to have your in-house. In-house is the term. In-house means in the organization, inside the boundaries of organization, your own employees. A good example of that I would give you is in the research and development, R&D, or just research. If you want to conduct marketing research, you have the common two options are that you hire a professional researcher to do it for you, an agency, outsource it. We call it outsourcing. Or you ask your own employees, we call it in-house teams, to do it for you. Well, in-house team is expensive, but for long term, it is very, very profitable because of many reasons. One of the reasons maybe they keep your business secrecy. They try to understand the culture of the organization, and you have more control over them compared to the outsource. So in-house and outsource to others. Move quickly. Well, there is a theory as well, and some of you may have heard of that theory. And I normally recommend to organizations and to people that theory as well. If you want to become a part of the revolution, you have to move quickly. And move quickly means that what you do is, and move quickly. Give me a second. When we say move quickly, we are referring to first mover theory. First mover theory is a theory that states that anybody who jumps into the market first earns the most. Any company who jumps into the market first earns the most. So if you move quickly, if you take a decision fast, you'll be able to get reward of that fast as well. So try to act fast, try not to delay. And we also have, even in our life, something which is called procrastination, right? The more you procrastinate, the worse it gets. So try to get your things done fast. If you pile up the things, and of course there are now new books as well. I was reading recently a very interesting book, and that book says that smart people, I'm not encouraging you to do that, but that's what, these are different theories. So one book states that, one writer states that smart people would actually procrastinate to the last time because they know that they are capable of doing it fast. In the time before that, they would utilize on other things. But to be safe, it's better to do it on time or move quickly, because it will result in higher return on investment. If you're planning to introduce new processes, try to introduce new process slowly and carefully, because there has been a clear evidence that when the new process or the revolution is brought into the organization or to the business processes, people normally, the old departments very often rejects it, because we human have a tendency of getting attached with things and processes. We feel comfortable. Take an example of these updates that we receive on our systems, right? I remember when Windows was updated from the common Windows that I used previously, where there used to be a start menu and this and that. I don't know which version was that, but it was introduced, and a new thing came where they've incorporated the tablet mode. I think it was Windows 10, and that was crazy in the beginning. That where can I find the things that I want to find? I was happy with my old style or my old Windows or my old operating system. So normally people get used to processes and things. So when you want to you want to roll out a new method, make sure that you do it carefully with the consent of people. Do it in steps, do it slowly, and make sure that the organizational employees are on board. Okay. Now, this is how a classic supply chain management process looks like. That is just one example. The stages, the steps, which are around 10 processes or 10 steps, may slightly differ, but overall the process is more or less the same. Start with selecting your suppliers. As I showed you that before the production, you have suppliers. Try to establish the logistic, and we are talking about inbound logistic. Have you heard of inbound logistic? Inbound means coming into the company. Inbound, coming into the company. There is another one which is called outbound, going outside the company. So we have inbound logistics, where the material or the supplies come inside the company. You have to manage that. It comes from the supplier. And then, of course, when the logistic comes, you have to design and manage it internally. Then try to establish those logistics which goes outside the companies, the outbound logistics. Then designing workflow in product solution, producing the products, running batch manufacturing. Batch manufacturing. Have you heard of batch manufacturing? They're just common steps that you follow in the supply chain. When we say batch manufacturing, we are referring to manufacturing in what do you call in batch. How could be an easy definition of batch? Like in pieces, in portion, in different slots, in different sequence, for example. So you have to define that properly as well. When we say running a batch manufacturing, we are referring to a process where you dedicate some people. Or another word all of a sudden came in my mind. An easy term used for it would be shifts, for example. Shift, where the products are produced in shifts or batches, where you decide who would be responsible for which batch of products or which groups of products, and which people are responsible for which groups of product. That way you keep a track of the proper batches. I remember the time where it was Note 5 or Note 6 when it had the battery problem. Because of this batch manufacturing, they found out that there were actually I think two suppliers providing Samsung batteries, and the problem was actually with only one supplier. So they actually found out the supplier, and because of the batch manufacturing process. So this is a very important process in the supply chain. Then acquiring means getting, installing, and maintaining the technology. Ordering process, pricing, billing, rebates, and terms. These are all part of the supply chain management, by the way. These are the steps that you have to understand in the supply chain. If you are a company that is handling multiple channels, I remember we had a complete chapter on multi-channel retailing. So similarly here, multiple channels, number 9. There are companies who are using multiple channels, right? For example, selling online and selling in brick and mortar are two different channels. And then managing the customer services, it includes everything, but they have only mentioned, say, installation and after sales services. So before sales, during sales, and after sales, all the services are included in the managing of customers. Okay. There's a very nice case that I'm going to share with you in a while, and that is the case of a company. The name of the company is Zara, and Zara is a fashion-oriented company, and Zara is famous for adopting the trends fast and reaching the customers fast, and breaking down the supply chain process fast. So the word fast is used by the author for Zara, and that's why a very nice case I'm going to share with you in a while is they call it Zara is equal to fast fashion. What it tells us is that normally in the whole supply chain, the products hang in between the processes. So from the supplier to the producer, there is a lag time. Have you heard of the lag time? Or the time where the products are produced and delivered. There is a time gap, right? For example, when we order a product from Lazada or Zalora or Amazon or any online store, they give us some time frame. When we buy the product and when the product is delivered to us, in between that is the time. That is a vacuum time, and that time costs a lot. Yeah, especially when you're a producer. So when you're a producer or when you're a seller, even you're a retailer, you see that when you go to a retail store or when you go to a store, a shopping mall, you see that there are hundreds and thousands of products in the store. Not all the products are sold on the same day. Those products are there for many, many days, many, many weeks, and depending on the product, if it is a hard good, If it is a product which is a non-perishable product, sometimes it stays for years. Now that is a very big cost for the supply chain members, right? So you're a shopkeeper, you're a seller, you're a retailer, and you have products worth $1 million in your store lying there for 1 year. That's a huge expense that you are faced with for 1 year. So Zara is famous for that. Is a case study of Zara. Not only Zara, other companies are there. Like Toyota is also famous for that. Toyota introduced a case. Toyota introduced, in fact, a method for that, how to get rid of the things fast. And they call it what? Anybody know what do they call it? What do the Toyota call it? JIT, just in time, is a supply chain terminology that is a very important one for you to understand. So just in time means that you don't stock a lot. You produce, you sell whenever it is needed. Because if you stock a lot, or if you pile up the products in your warehouse, you have to have a lot of cost that will incur because of the stockpiling. And when we talk about business, for business, you need to have money, and that money or that amount that you have already reserved in the stock, it should be circulating and generating more money for you. So respond to the fashion trends during the selling seasons. How do they do that? Again, I'm going to share with you the case study in a while. Customer preferences and individual store sales data. They look at the customer preferences. They're talking about this. This slide is about Zara. And they look at the individual store sales. So what customer prefer? How would a company know about customer preferences? How would a company know about preferences of the customers fast, in real time? The best method is social media. Through social media monitoring, we do social media monitoring, right? There is a team in the company. Normally their job is just to monitor social media, that's it, and monitor hot key terms. So they just sit and they just read and respond to the social media, and they check the trends, they check the customer preferences, they check the customer likeness and dislikeness. So in case of Zara, for example, they introduced suppose they introduced a jacket and they launched that jacket, and then they posted a photo of that jacket on, say, Pinterest or Instagram or any of the social media platforms, and then they quickly monitor what the customer respond in response to that, in that new fashion. And then based on the customer responses, what do they do is, based on the customer responses, they act fast in order to make sure that they deliver value to the customers. Ability to produce and restock fast selling items just in 2 weeks. Normally it takes months for the industry. That's the fast thing. Online sales strong and mobile apps. So online sales and mobile apps are used by these companies nowadays. And on top of everything is good customer experience. Make sure that the customers like the whole buying process. One of the things that the Zara also do, and it's also very interesting, is requesting customer to share the images of their purchases. And I think Lazada also does that. Amazon does that. Shopee does that. Have you noticed that when you buy from any of these platforms, and they deliver to you, once the product is delivered, either the same day or the next day, they will send you an email or a notification requesting you for a product review. And when you're writing the product review, and when you're submitting the writing product review, they would actually remind you that it is really good if you can share a video or a photo, an image of the product that you have purchased. And it works really good for the company. It really works good for the customers as well. So this is what Zara is also doing, and it has been a profitable journey for them, and that's why they are named as the company with a company called Fast Fashion Company. Now, how can we make the value chain or the supply chain, which is now called value chain, cost effective? Because I told you the processes are very, very expensive process, especially when there is a longer lag time between the products produced, the product produced and the product eventually delivered to the customers, the purchase of the raw material and the delivery of the raw material. These lag times or these gaps in the times are very expensive. So how can we make it more cost effective? The normal expenses that the companies have to pay for the cost, different type of costs, are information cost. Now, information cost is one of the actually the easiest one or the cheapest one, I would say, is how you acquire information from the customers. That would not be that expensive at times, but the expensive one or the costly one would be when you provide the information to the customers. So what are the main type of costs when it comes to when it comes to supply chain? The information cost. So when we say information cost, we are referring to, for example, promotion in general. And we know that promotion is a very, very expensive tool for the company to provide information. And when you say promotion, I'm generally talking about different promotional tools. One of the tools, which is called, for example, advertisement. Companies spend more than $100 million a year on providing information through advertisements. So then we have transactions. It also costs. Your transactional cost is also a bigger cost. Transaction in the whole supply chain is an expensive process. You produce a product on $1 being a producer, but when it reaches the customer, the same product is $5. Why? Because of the transactional costs that incurred in the supply chain. Another very big cost that the companies are facing is the fragmented customers market. The fragmented customers market. Do you know what is fragmented? There is another one which is segmented, and one is fragmented. Fragmented means scattered, segmented means together. But when we say when we technically speak, we are referring to a market. A fragmented market is a market where there is no single company that can influence the overall market. So a type of pure competition, I would say. Have you heard of these things? Pure competition, monopoly, oligopoly. It's a situation where there is no single company that can influence the customer market. The market is so fragmented. It is not in one place. It is not in one area where you being a company can influence. There are so many competitors in the market, they're influencing them. So that is a bigger cost, right? When you don't have influence in the market, it means that you have to go with the flow of the market. And that is a bigger cost as well. Product standardization is also a cost. Producing the same product, well, in the product, it may not be that difficult today, but it becomes extremely, extremely difficult when the goods, in the tangibles, it is easy. But when we refer to services, standardization becomes extremely, extremely difficult. In fact, it is one of the inherited feature of services that they cannot be standardized. Even though there are certain type of services that can be standardized, and there are mechanisms through which you can standardize the service, but generally it is not that easy. So product standardization is a costly process as well. Information plus transaction cost is friction. Friction usually accounts for over 40% of the chain cost. These are some of the costs that you will face in the supply chain, and you have to make these processes less costly to make it more effective for you in terms of generation of revenue or returns. Now, I told you that I'm going to share with you a case study of Zara before we move forward to the other important things. And there's a case of Dell, which I'm not going to share with you today. I'm going to share with you the case of Zara. Read the case of Zara. I'll share with you on the Google Classroom as well. Read the case and comment on it. What did you learn from it? Take notes from it and upload your notes. And that case will help you understand how Zara acts swiftly when it comes to the channel of distribution or supply chain. I think that's it for today. I hope that you enjoyed the lecture. See you in the live session with more discussion. Take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum.